if you all hold up your books, I will video this. I know it's the obligatory, bookstore, whatever. At least they're yellow. We're ready? All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, virtual audience. Let's welcome Elle Cosimano for her first live visit to the Poison Pen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you guys for coming. You made me look good.
Well, I'm sure that you're the one who's making them look good too by giving them this yellow book to look at and so forth, which is fun. So this is the fourth book in the Finlay Donovan series. And I mentioned when I was sending out invitations and so forth that I think of this as kind of a Janet Ivanovich cozy. And then hilariously this morning, Janet wrote to me to say, commiserating with me because she's 76 and I'm 83, and she wanted to know if I'd had any artificial because she's having a hip replacement. And I had a knee replacement, so we exchanged orthopedic emails this morning. I know. See what you have to look forward to. But anyway, with any luck, Janet will be here in November. She said she'd be here if she can walk because, we have to, but I'm sure she'll be fine because orthopedic surgery has really progressed, right? So I have an artificial knee, which I'm very happy with. It's now 14 years old and seems to work, and maybe it will live as long as I do. We'll have to see. But Finlay is much younger. so she's worrying about being a single mom.
Yeah.
Right.
Finlay's much younger than I am, too. So,
well, there you are. Right. So why don't you, since we haven't had a chance to talk to you in person, although you and I did a Zoom event, if I remember right, was it the first or the second book?
We did a Zoom. I was a conversation partner for Megan Miranda, who is my critique partner.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So why don't you tell us about, because you're a young adult author. You've written several books for young adults, and you have been nominated and won awards for your young adult series. So what catapulted you into adult fiction?
Yeah, so I started in, my first book came out in 2014, and that was a young adult dark thriller, mystery thriller. And so my first 6 novels, full-length novels, were about and for young adults. And I had not planned to make a move into the adult fiction realm. It was not anything that I had forecasted for myself. I had certainly not planned to make a move into comedy. That was, if you've read any of my young adult books, they're very, very dark, right? So it all sort of shifted during a very crowded lunch at a Panera Bread.
Is there such a thing as a crowded lunch at Panera Bread?
There is.
Okay.
I know this because this was the day that the idea for Finlay Donovan was born. It was January 2018. I was at my annual writing retreat with my 2 beloved critique partners, Megan Miranda and Ashley Elston. We had been writing parallel. We all started in YA together back in 2010, 2011, roughly. And we've been writing parallel, when the 3 of us started, we were all baby authors. None of us had any books out. And we all had young children at home, and none of the 3 of us knew what we were doing. We had no clue. But we had all signed with the same literary agent. And so when she brought us all on, it was very clear to her that we also knew not what we were doing. And so she gave us each other's email addresses, and she said, now go fix each other's books. And we've been fast friends ever since. And so every year we get together for a writing retreat. And it so happened that at this particular retreat, we were lunching in Panera Bread. It was 12 o'clock on a Friday. It was a very, very busy Friday. Every table was full. And as we do sometimes, we get a little carried away while we're brainstorming, and we lost track of our volume in a public space and sort of forgot, that there are other people around. And I was brainstorming through a particularly dark novel, a particularly violent scene that I was working through. I knew somebody had to die, didn't know who needed to die, how it was going to happen, or who was going to clean it up. But I was asking all these questions out loud in a very public space. And it didn't occur to us that other people might not communicate this way over a lunch tray. until the woman at the table beside us got up and walked out. And she left her lunch. She was clearly, deeply disturbed by some of the questions and conversations that we were having. And so later that night, over several adult beverages in our pajamas back at the hotel as we were retreating on, someone posed the question, wouldn't it have been hilarious if she had assumed we were contract killers? And the idea for Finlay hit me square in the face. It was like one of those lightning moments. And I turned to both of them and I said, I have this wild idea for a story and I need one of you to write it. I can't write this book. It's going to have to be an adult novel. And at the time, Megan had just broken out with All the Missing Girls, which was a massive bestseller. And I thought if anyone could pull off this story as an adult novel, Megan could do it. I said, you have to write this book. She said, oh no, that's not my book. And so I turned to Ashley, and she had had huge success with a YA rom-com. That was 10 Blind Dates. It had just sold to Netflix. You know, she was doing very, very well. It had sold in like a bazillion languages around the world. And I thought, well, this could be a comedy. This could be a dark comedy. So I said, Ashley, will you please write this book because I really need to read it? And she said, they both said, and then she said, hell no. And they both looked at me and they said, Elle, this is your book. You need to read it. You need to write it. And I said, I can't. This is not. I don't write adult books. I don't write comedy. I'm not a funny person. This is not going to end well. And they said, this is your book. You will write it. And they were both my inspiration. They were my support system. They were my swift kick in the pants when I told myself I couldn't do it. And if you enjoy the Finlay books, you have both of them to thank because I never would have done this on my own. So long answer to the short question, how did I get to adult books? It was all Megan and Ashley's fault.
You know, that's really a great story. Let me give a plug for Megan, who will be here on Saturday, April 20th. I might be the only person who knows not only what dates are coming, but what day of the week they fall on in order to do that. But we're very fond of Megan, and I'm looking forward to seeing her again. Yes, she's been very successful. And Ashley has had isn't she the one that had the big January book?
Ashley's had a huge run on the New York Times. So here's a really cool story. And we talk about like Finlay being a story of like women empowering women lifting up and supporting other women. And you know that my first book was dedicated to the two of them. So we started together in like roughly 2010 with 0 books between us. Fast forward to today, if I had to guess, I think today, right now, the three of us combined have 33 published novels between the three of us, and all 3 of us are New York Times bestsellers. So
there must have been something in the tea at Panera Bread.
It was something in the Panera Bread.
Or maybe it was the adult beverages later with your pajamas, more likely.
It might have been
That's a wonderful story, though. It's terrific. So are you now comfortable writing comedy?
I am. I think we all suffer imposter syndrome at some point. So with every book, I tell myself, I can't do this. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And I bang my head against the wall and hate my own work just like anybody else. But at the end of the day, I'm comfortable in Finlay's voice, and I love spending time with Finlay and Vero and the entire cast and crew, the whole gang. You guys, this one, like the whole gang goes to Atlantic City. Y'all are, if you're in it for the shenanigans, I'm going to tell you, if you're here for the shenanigans, there are more shenanigans in book 4 than all the first 3 books combined. So buckle up.
So it seems to me that one of the reasons that the series has been so successful are the great titles. So who came up with Finlay Donovan is Killing It, which is an absolutely brilliant title?
That's a great question. It was not me.
Rarely is the author.
It rarely is
Very
the
rarely
author.
is it the author.
Actually, the original working title of the book, when we're drafting the stories, we kind of come up with like a temporary title until the publisher determines what the final title is going to be. So we call it the working title. The working title of the book was The Hit. And if you remember from the first book, The Hit was the name of Finlay's book within the book. So we do pay homage to the original working title. But the phenomenal Finlay Donovan titles were the brainchild of my editor, Catherine Richards. She's absolutely brilliant. And when we were struggling, we'd been going back and forth for weeks trying to find the perfect title for the book. And she was the one she said, what about Finlay Donovan is Killing It? And we all stopped. And everyone got quiet. We're like, we can work with that. And then it just lends itself so well to. So if anybody would like to help me title book 5, this is the conversation we're having this week.
Right. So you may not know that the author doesn't have the author does not have a right to title their book or to determine the cover art. All of that is really left up to the publisher. In fact, the author's only copyright is the text, and the publisher owns everything else about the book. So we've had over the years many interesting tales from authors about how the book got titled. And every once in a while, some, New York Times book reviewer or something will publish a list of, this was the original title for like Gone with the Wind, and this is the one we ended up with. And some of the original titles just suck, they are so bad. But if you're going to write a series, you do need titles that can carry on. So once you got Finlay Donovan, the rest of it kind of comes naturally, doesn't it? So rolls the dice.
Yeah.
Right. And it does sort of up the caper element too, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think, one of the things that I love most about this series is that it's just fun. Y'all are having fun. I'm having fun. You're having fun. Everybody's having fun. And I think that's the goal. Like for me, joy is the goal. If I'm making you joyful, if I'm making you laugh, like I've accomplished my mission. But what a lot of you probably don't realize is behind the scenes, we're all having a lot of fun with these books too. So my particular publishing imprint before Finlay came in was known mostly for dark domestic and psychological suspense, dark thrillers, procedurals, they have a very dark palette, And then Finlay comes along, and all of a sudden we've got pastel colors, and we've got these fun titles, and we're doing fuzzy dice. Did everybody put in for their fuzzy dice? Okay, good. So we've got wig scarves, and we've got sunglasses, and we've got all of these things. And, I think it's just everything about the books is about enjoyment and laughter and escapism and turning off the world for a little bit. And we're having as much fun with all those bright colors and fun titles and cool toys as you all.
So, and we are living in dark times, so, there's a particular appetite. I think we made a decision, the staff and I, before this year started, that we were going to be here entirely for entertainment and information this year, and we were going to eschew everything political. I hung myself by agreeing to do one book title without reading it. I almost never do that. It turned out to be a Washington book. But the good news is it turns out to be about evil staffers and dysfunction. It doesn't have anything to do with politics itself. It's just, bad actors. Well, we know about the bad actors in Washington, but this is the ones we don't know about. And so I'm kind of off the hook. But I do think it's, in hard times, you can tell if you go back and even look at like what was published in the 30s and so forth. People come to books and, stories to escape. We like history because we know how it came out. We like romance and we like things that make us feel good. So your timing for this, unfortunately, depending on one's view, your timing for this was excellent in that, people want to laugh and be entertained and feel good.
Yeah, I mean, the first Finlay came out at the tail end of COVID.
Right.
And I still get daily emails and letters and messages from people who want to share with me how Finlay got them through a dark time, how they just needed to laugh and they didn't know they needed to laugh. And that's probably the most rewarding thing about this series. I never would have expected that, but that's the coolest thing ever.
So talk to us about the female friendship, because that's an important part of this. Vero is the nanny and partner in crime.
She's the accountant. She is. Yeah, Vero is everybody's favorite. We all love Vero. And I think for me, one of the questions I'm always asked at every event is, who is your Vero? And I think it's because a lot of people conflate me with Finlay, and I understand why. Like, Finlay's voice is my voice, my mommy voice is Finlay's mommy's voice, the writer voice is Finlay's writer voice. So I can see that, and I can see why everybody wants there to be like one person in my life who is my Vero, My ride or die. Well, my ride or die is my husband. He's been my best friend since we were 18, so 32 years now. I don't really have like a single Vero. To me, Vero has become and is sort of the compilation of, she's inspired by all of the women in my life who have unconditionally supported me in some way, and maybe we've made some foolish decisions along the way, because Finley's messy and things don't always, but it's that unconditional component. My mother for me was a huge part. She's the only reason I'm writing today, because I was a miserable real estate agent for a really long time. And I was creeping up on my 40th birthday before my mom said, I think you need to take some time off and do something for you. And she was the one who planted the bug in my ear that started this whole business going. So in addition to Megan and Ashley, you can just thank my mom. But, and so there's my mom she's part of Vero, There's Megan and Ashley who are part of Vero. There's my very best friend who is part of Vero, who, she's not part of my writing life, but she's always supportive of everything that I do. I think we all can look around at our community of women that support us, that hear our dreams, that tell us they're possible, that kick us in the pants when we don't believe we can do it ourselves. And those are the Veros. And so for me, Vero is a combination of a lot of people.
I'm going to turn off the air conditioning. I don't know about you, but I'm getting cold, and some of you might be getting cold. So hang on one second. Also, it makes terrible noises a lot of the time, which is not a good idea.
Our adorable dog in the audience. Have you read book 4? Okay, there's a treat in there for you, because I think this dog might appear in the book.
Oh.
Like, I thought there was a reason maybe you brought him. I thought maybe you'd read the book. Okay, well, I'm not going to spoil it for you.
We should get the dog on camera. I
We
mean,
should totally
after
get the
all,
dog.
nobody gets to see the dog, right? When we get to the end, you can bring the puppy up and we'll see. How old is the dog? 5 months. Oh, it really is a puppy then.
Puppy.
I still call our puppies puppies, and they're going to be 3 in June, and I don't want them ever to grow up. So there we are. Right. I know. So Finlay, why did you decide to make her a mystery writer? Is that sort of a, thing within the thing?
Yeah, it's kind of a thing within the thing. I think the whole book has a very meta component to it.
Right.
And at the time I started the book, for the longest time I said I wasn't going to write the book because I was just being difficult, and I was facing a lot of self-doubt. That's a big leap. And so when I did start the book, I was kind of at a rough place in my career. Things weren't going particularly well. I was winning lots and lots of awards, but I wasn't selling any books. And we know in this business that can be a deal breaker. That can be a career breaker. And so I was really questioning if this is something I was going to be able to continue doing. I was going through a lot of that. And so there are parts of my frustration with publishing that kind of came through in this draft as I was writing. At the time, I didn't think it would ever sell. I was kind of writing it as a pet project for myself just to see. And so I was channeling some of that frustration. Everyone asks, is Sylvia, the literary agent, is Sylvia like your agent? Because she's a character. And I say, no, I have a very professional, wonderful, they're both from New Jersey. That's about all they have in common. But at the time, I was channeling some of my frustration with publishing into the book, into the characters. And so, there were some things within a book that, I was a mystery writer. So why not make Finlay a mystery writer, a struggling mystery writer whose career is not going very well and who's having a hard time making ends meet? And that felt pretty on the nose.
Right. So you put her in a difficult domestic situation, and single mom, not a lot of money, and then she gets the contract-killing contract.
Yes.
Right.
As one does.
That's right. As one does. Right. Right. When your money is tight, good things happen to you. Right. Something like that. So how much do you want to say about Finlay Donovan Rolls the Dice? Because there's so much action in this. You don't want to do spoilers, but what can you say?
Yeah, I'm very much like I'm no, this is a no spoiler zone because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone. I will say that I think it's safe to say that we're going on a road trip. It starts with Finlay and Vero in pursuit of something that has been taken from them. So for those of you who have not quite gotten to book 3 yet, I won't spoil that, but something important, 2 important things have been taken from them, and they're in Atlantic City. And so our dynamic duo has decided that they're going on a rescue mission to Atlantic City. And of course, the only way to do this without creating suspicion is to say they need a girls' weekend away. They've had some stress. I think they're due. They're due for a little vacay. So, of course, they say they're going on a girls' weekend away. And, of course, that does not end up only being a girls' weekend away. The children end up tagging along. And, of course, we know you can't have a vacation with the children because vacation and children don't go together in the same sentence, right? And, of course, we have an ex-husband who insists on tagging along. And there happens to be a mom who insists on tagging along. And then, of course, before long, the Fairfax County Police Department decide it's time to tag along. So the whole crew is there. We're not missing anybody. And we go on a pretty wild adventure. I will say this is probably the most shenanigan-filled book I've written. I will say it is grossly off the rails. We have a really good time in Atlantic City. Really good time. What happens in Atlantic City stays in Atlantic City. We have a very, very good time, and I hope you guys have a blast reading it. This was probably the most fun I've had writing a book that I can remember.
Do you dream up all the shenanigans yourself, or do you have sort of a support group that comes up with wild and wicked plots?
A little of both. When I get stuck, because there are times, like Finlay, where she's staring at the screen, that is not at all uncommon in my world. And there are times when I stare at the screen for much longer than a few hours. Like the last 3 weeks, I call it ceiling fan time. It's when I have to lay on the bed and stare at the ceiling fan for prolonged periods of time while I stress out about why my book isn't working and try to figure out how to make it work. And so, when Finlay's staring for long periods of time at a blank screen, that is not really a far-fetched thing. It happens. And, with this particular book, I got to a point where I kind of knew what was happening, but I was struggling with some of these things, whether it was I wasn't in a funny headspace and I didn't think the book was funny enough, or I couldn't make the plot work. And when I get to those points, when I kind of think I'm going in the right direction, but I'm stuck, I call critique partners and we Zoom and we brainstorm and we retreat and we laugh and we giggle and we kind of refill the creative well. And I think sometimes just being among other creative people is all I need. It's like we absorb that positive energy. We absorb those can-do messages. We absorb the support. Sometimes we absorb a big fat kick in the rear. And in my case, I was getting all of that from my critique partners, whether it was just sitting down and brainstorming funny things or sharing stories. I had, at one point I was, about 3/4 of the way through the book, and I was like, it's just not funny. And I was talking to Kara Thomas, who's one of my critique partners. And coincidentally, all my critique partners write very dark suspense and dark thrillers. Like, they don't write comedy at all. And but her suggestion was the one that caused me to go back and revisit everything in the book. And then it all came together. And she said, "You're in Atlantic City, Elle." She said, "Lean into it." Just lean into it. And it was like, that was like all I needed to hear. And that one sentence was all I needed to go back and start over. And then all of a sudden, then we're having fun.
It's an interesting thought that if she practices enough creating shenanigans and heists and all, if this book gig doesn't work out, she could become a career criminal. Right?
I know a few things. I'm just saying.
I've met many authors who alternatively could become career criminals. It sort of works out that way.
We do some interesting research.
Right. So I went on to your website since we hadn't really met and had a chance to talk. And a question that's addressed at some length there is, why isn't there more sex in your books? So why isn't there more sex in your books?
I get
And
this.
I'm not advocating for more
Yeah.
sex in your books. It's just a question.
I get this question a lot. Y'all are thirsty. Y'all slide into my DMs asking me to turn up the heat. No, I get this question so much that I actually wrote an essay about it.
That's
And
what I read, and I recommend you go to her website and read it also. It's very informative.
yeah, and I think a lot of people presume that because the books are closed door, I call them closed door, because we turn up the heat a little bit and then we give them their privacy and we let them kind of, do their thing. And we see them in the morning. But because these particular books are closed door, I get a lot of questions about that. Why? And some people are very excited about that. Thank you for not putting more sex in the books. And other people are bemoaning that there is not more sex in the books. Please, Elle, put more sex in the books. And I think, one thing is it is not because I don't enjoy reading sex in books. I am just as into hot, steamy loins romance as the next person. And I can take some heat. But really the decision for this particular book, it really boiled down to me to the story I was trying to tell. And in this particular case, if I was telling the story and the plot revolved around the will they, won't they, if the whole plot of the Finlay books was Finlay and Nick's relationship and the culmination of that relationship, then it would make sense for me to leave that door wide open. And I would leave it wide for you. But in this case, this is really the story of a female friendship. This is the story of Finlay and Vero. This is the story of a woman rediscovering and redefining herself. And there happens to be some romance along the way, because part of Finlay's rediscovery is, kind of reclaiming all of the parts of her, all of the parts, all of the parts of what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a mom, what it is to have a career, what it is to be a romantic partner. And so there are those facets of her life. But to me, that's not the core of the plot. This is really Finlay and Vero's story. This is Finlay's story of finding herself. And so if I were to kind of take you into the bedroom for a prolonged detour to Sexy Town, that can be a lot of fun, but it can also distract from the story that I'm trying to tell. And so it was a conscious choice for these books not to do that. It wasn't a moral choice because I'm not fond of those kinds of books. I am very fond of those kinds of books. I have a lot of those kinds of books at home. And actually my conversation partner 2 days from now is Allie Hazelwood. So if you're a fan of those kinds of books, yeah. And last year I did an event with Christina Lauren. I'm huge fans of both of them. So that was really the driving choice between why not open the door.
But there is another element, which you also mentioned in your essay, which is really true. She is writing a mystery, and there is a plot, therefore, that chugs along, and eventually, whatever, it has to be, the investigation has to be solved. If you detour off into sex scenes, they can completely derail the plot. Various people have asked me to define romantasy, for example. What in the world is romantasy, which is a brand new term. I was stuck in Boston at Logan Airport in a blizzard by accident early in January, and I ran out of things to do. So I actually went and paid retail price for a copy of The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros at the Hudson's bookstore, because, I figured I'm a super fast reader. It's a big book, so I thought it could get me through spending the day at Logan. There's a lot of sex in The Fourth Wing, but it's a whole different plot structure. It's not about, solving a mystery. It's really about, survival. And I love, because I am a mystery reader. Have any of you read The Fourth Wing? Okay, so there's a tremendous contradiction in this book, which J.T. Ellison and I had a discussion about. As you all know, it opens with the effort of the new recruits to walk across a bridge to get to the place that they are going to be educated in how to defend the realm by learning to be dragon riders and so forth. And some of them fall off the bridge. So right there, my first point is if you're actually recruiting people and you're running out of people to defend your realm, why do you drop them off a bridge to the ground instead of getting them all into the school? But so I said that to JT. Sorry, JT, but I'm going to out you on this one. And she said, she watches these a lot, and she said, it's about being able to climb onto the dragon. If you can't make it across the bridge, you can't get up on the dragon and you won't be able to fly it. And I said, did you read the end of the book? She said, yeah. And I said, so this person is so small that the dragon has to bend down and put his leg down so she can climb up on it. And she can't fly him until they actually create a saddle for her and strap her in. So I don't think that this rationale is actually working. But, because the sex is great and the dragons are great, who actually cares if there's any logic in it? But if you're writing a mystery, there has to be logic. There actually has to be a reason why she walked across the bridge, other than she had to be able to climb on the dragon. And so that sort of explains romantasy to me. She can just make shit up and have dragons. What can I say? I had a great time, and I loved reading the book. I had a great time at the Boston airport, reading aloud to, about the dragon. And I haven't picked up the sequel because I actually don't have time to read. You have to make a moral choice as a bookseller, which is if you are going to host people and have book clubs and other things, you have to actually read all those books. There are roughly 1,000 new adult fiction books published every single month now. It's just an explosion, and the best I can do is read 200. I'm a super speed reader, but 200 a month is really my best shot. No, it's really true. I can do that. My mother could do it, so it's genetic. But anyway, I don't have to read Fourth Wing to sell Fourth Wing, right? Because it's going to sell itself. So it was just a fluke that I had, a day in Boston where I could actually read it. And it, every once in a while I do get to do that, dip off into something that normally I wouldn't have to read. But most of the time I don't read bestsellers that we are not connected with because from a commercial standpoint, they're going to sell themselves, and there we are. Right. So that might be the only romantasy I'm ever going to read, but we'll find out. So now you're all going to rush to read Fourth Wing, right, that missed it? And you can decide for yourself how you feel about the opening. Right. Anyway, but I think in your essay you mentioned that because there is a mystery plot, that you could derail it with sex scenes or people would lose track of the actual murder plot in favor of, steamy romance.
Yeah, I think one of the things that works particularly well with these kinds of books is pacing is really important. And so, keeping the pace moving through the book and a consistent kind of steady pace. And by now, y'all know that I have a nice, slow, steady build, and then kind of like a roller coaster. And then you hit that peak, and then you're coming down, and you're buckling up for the rest of the night because you're probably not going to put the rest down. But the pacing becomes important with thrillers, and certainly with mystery, kind of keeping the mystery moving forward. That we're focusing on that as the kind of
sure, and that's true with shenanigans too. I mean, if you structure them, then you don't want people to lose track of where they are. It's great. We probably said everything we need to say, and I said more than I could have said, should have said anyway. Why don't we ask for, sorry, sometimes I get carried away, but why don't you ask for questions from the audience, because that would be fun for everybody.
Ask me anything. It's a great question. Right now, we have a total of 7 under contract. So we've got the first 4 are done. We have 3 more coming. And then, of course, the Vero novella or short story is already out in the world if you have not yet read that. It's in ebook and audiobook format. And it makes a great companion to this book because we get some of Vero's backstory before she meets Finlay. And her history with Javi. So if you're intrigued with that particular history, you'll kind of get to know a little bit more there. What we'll do beyond that is really not up to me. It's up to you. And a lot of people are surprised by that answer, but let me explain. The length and longevity of a series depends entirely on the health and the volume of the sales. So when the publisher asks, well, how many books could you potentially envision writing? I say, well, how many are you willing to pay me for? And ultimately, how many they will actually let me write is going to depend entirely on how we're doing from a sales point of view. So when you see me online singing and dancing and jumping up and down about pre-orders, it's because pre-orders drive the longevity of the tail for the series. And so a lot of decisions are made for series very, very early on. So right now, I'm very excited to say you all did great. We've got 7 books under contract. We're super excited about that.
It's a lot, let me
That's
say.
a lot.
That is a very forward investment for an author. And let me say that you all being here and buying books is an essential part of keeping this going. The reason we have this incredible roster of authors that come through here is that we are a reporting bookstore. All of your sales from here are what go into determining bestseller lists. You may think this is the bookstore, but you would be wrong. It's the rest of the building, because only 20% of our customers live here. The rest of them are all over the United States, all over the world. Elle's been in the back room. We ship out every day huge quantities of books, and part of that is the streaming. So, virtual audience, thank you for joining us. Right. But, you know, I try to explain that to people that if you buy a book on Amazon or somewhere and bring it in here, that's fine, but we can't count it. And therefore, you know, it doesn't help Elle in terms of statistics for her publisher. We don't ticket our events as a general rule because we already know how many people are not ever going to be here because they're like back home in Omaha watching this or buying it or whatever. And the other reason we stream is that it does mean that audiobook and digital readers can connect with Elle. You don't have to buy a book in order to come. So, you know, this is a not-for-profit bookstore. She could probably work that out from what I'm having to say. I do this for fun. And I'm glad that we can, you know, help. But in the end, it's print books that really determine the life of a series. It's not audiobooks and it's not ebooks. It's print books. You know, how worthwhile is it for the publisher to continue to do that? And the other thing is, if you don't do pre-orders, the publisher prints now pretty much to pre-orders. And I've had this happen a lot, is that we run short because you didn't order enough books, and then you show up or whatever, and we don't have enough books. You know, because that's how it all works out. So it's a very cooperative thing between the author and the audience to have a long series to make it work out.
Yeah, and series especially are particularly dependent on the readership and your willingness to continue buying them. So thank you. I'm very grateful you're here.
All right, other questions? I said we do questions.
Yeah.
And I start talking again.
Where do you start in story development? At the beginning, middle, or end?
That's such a good question. The question is, where do I start in story development? With this series, it's kind of interesting because my launching point sort of comes off the cliffhanger from the previous book. So I know I kind of have to know earlier where I'm going. And that sort of kicks off my development process. I sort of know what my central mystery is going to be. You know, it's whatever was kicked off by the end of the last book. So I kind of start with that as the kernel of the idea for the story. And then in terms of developing the story itself, I try to know, or at least be able to see in my mind, a handful of scenes that are pivotal points in the story that I can kind of build from. So I don't necessarily start with a very detailed outline. I don't have it all mapped out clearly in my head. I know where my story begins and I know where my story ends, and I know some really critical points in between. But I try to give myself some flexibility to play and explore as I'm writing, because I find if I'm too structured at the beginning, my story feels very flat and rigid. And these books are fun. They're not cut out for that kind of feeling. If I'm too rigid in my writing, you guys feel it, I feel it, everybody feels it. So I try to give myself room to veer off the trail and explore. And sometimes I hit dead ends and I got to start over and scrap whole chunks of a book. But, you know, from a development standpoint, I'm trying to kind of start with the central mystery. What is the central mystery? From there, I'm looking at the character arc. How do I want my character to grow through the story. Who is she at the beginning of the story? Who's she going to be by the end of the story? And how am I going to get her there? And then I try to pick 5 or 6 plot points that I can see in my head that are kind of clutch to the story. And then I let myself play in a big sandbox full of toys all by myself until I completely mess up the story. And that's when I call on my friends for help. So I don't know if that answers the question.
You mentioned you toss big chunks of books. Do they get filed and then maybe show up in another book, or do they, or, like, where does that go? 'Cause
Rarely ever.
really?
Yeah, no, I mean, normally when I scrap it, it's because it's not working. It's not working. A scene wasn't earned. Something happened that shouldn't have happened, that didn't make sense to happen. You know, whatever it was, there was a reason it wasn't working. And I don't, you know, have you heard the expression "kill your darlings"? It's a very popular expression in writing. Is when we have to be willing to cut things that we might not want to cut, you know, and throw them on the scrap room floor. And the longer I do this, the easier that gets. And I find when I first started, it was really hard. And I would put all of my cut passages in a file that I would save on my hard drive, because then I wasn't really throwing it away. It wasn't really gone, so to speak. You know, it was always there. And what I learned over time is that I'm cutting for a reason. It's not working. It's not working. Let's get rid of it and move on, you know, because if I let myself dwell on those things, I'm not going to have a clear headspace to come up with new material and new things that might work better.
How long and grueling are your book tours, like being here tonight, and how important?
That's
Is it really grueling?
Yes, but it's also so much fun. For me, and it's all different because not everyone has the privilege of being able to be sent on tour. It took many, many years. I wrote many years before I was in a position where my books were doing well enough to justify my publisher investing in a tour. So this is really a privileged place to be able to go on tour. For me, my tours have been anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks. That's about all I can take before I keel over, because it's a different city. It's airplane, hotel, bookstore, airplane, hotel, bookstore every day for 2 weeks. And then I need to go home and be with my family and stare at the ceiling fan and write a book. But it is grueling from a schedule standpoint. It is invigorating being here with you. There is nothing cooler than talking to people who've been inside your headspace for as many years as you all have been inside my headspace. You get things about me even my husband doesn't understand. And that's a pretty special thing. Like, I mean, writing a book sometimes is like gutting yourself and kind of putting your insides on the outside. And that's a risky, kind of terrifying proposition. And it's really a cool, amazing, reassuring thing to come out and talk to your readers who've been following your books and your characters and know them as well, and some of you better than I do, you know, for as long as you have. And there's something that re-energizes me doing that. So yeah, it's exhausting, but it is also so cool. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
We're from Washington State. We couldn't get a bookstore to get you, so we said bye to our families, and here we are.
Washington State. Washington State.
And we do audiobooks at the gym, and then we'll buy and so Finlay, the first one was the first audiobook, and I was like, hey, you got to get this. It's on Hoopla. Do it.
Awesome.
And then we've been buying them when they've come out, and they're just fantastic series. And we love some hot, steamy stuff, too. But I was telling my friend, because we bought the books and we went and sat over on the corner until we had to come back, that I love the romance aspect, and it doesn't go too into it because it sticks with that. And you do a fabulous job with that.
Thank you. You had me at Washington State. Like that's the farthest.
Yeah, we emailed you.
I remember.
We went down to Pelican Bay and we met TJ Klune.
Nice.
And we were like, hey, here's a list of people that we want you. We'll drive back down to Seattle. It's only an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
But with all that rambling, what's your favorite Finlay book?
What's my favorite Finlay book? I think book one will always be closest to my heart because it's what started my journey. And it was the one that was inspired most by real people, real events in my own life. So I think for me, book one will always probably hold the most special place in my heart. But if I had to pick a second, it would probably be Rolls the Dice because it's just so fun. Like this book is just fun. This book, while Finlay was like the most emotional part of the process for me, Finlay Donovan is killing it. Finlay Donovan Rolls the Dice is where I just let loose and had a really good time with it, and that was just a good time.
You did a great job from where I'm at so far.
Thank you. Y'all are in for a ride. But I am honored, like really honored that y'all came so far. That's amazing. Really amazing.
You and the cactus and check. So
Check.
we're relaxed.
There you go. All right, love it. There was a hand up in the back earlier.
Me or no?
Yeah.
I have a zillion questions, but I'll only ask one. Take a drink because I know you're.
Yeah.
So you just explained the difference in your first book and your current one, your feelings about it. How about as a writer or as a person? Like, how have you changed over the course of 4 books?
Oh, that's such a good question. How have I changed as a writer? This might surprise you, but you would think 10 novels in, I would feel pretty confident about this. I get less confident with every book I write. I become slower. I become harder on myself. I doubt myself more. And I take more time to finish a book. And so it's really interesting, like, I don't know, like, I'm not sure why that is, but maybe part of it is imposter syndrome. And, you know, Finlay's dealing with some imposter syndrome in the books. You talk about these being very meta books. Like, I deal with some of my own shit in these books. And so as Finlay's dealing with her imposter syndrome, so am I. And so I don't know. I think the thing that I've learned is that while I know more about how to do this, I don't know that it ever gets easier. Maybe the more we know, the harder it is because we know what to be afraid of, if that makes sense.
Christina, come here a minute. Come on. Don't be shy. Come on. So Christina had a reason to ask this question. This is Christina. I am going to.
Come up, Christina.
Come on. Come on. Christina debuts her first novel here on Monday, March 25th. She won I know, very exciting. She won the Tony Hillerman Prize, which is given to a book set in the Southwest. Christina is our NPR reporter, and she has written a book called Off the Air, which is set here in Phoenix, and a wonderful mystery, but also I think has some really startling things to tell you about what chasing the news is all about today, right? It's about clicks and clickbait.
That's life, isn't it?
Yeah, really is. But anyway, Christina has been here. We worked on the book together for a long time, and then she has an agent and now is published by Satan. But she is the sister of Elle because it's the same publisher in the same house. So I hope that she will come and you all will come back and see her on March 25th. But she's understandably terrified about how the reception for this book is going to be.
Scary.
Yep, I know. So I knew when she asked that question what it was all about. And I would also like to say, because this is a sort of St. Martin's night, that on Thursday, Hank Philippi Ryan will be here.
Yes.
Her new book, actually published in February, but she's here because of the Tucson Book Festival, is the book I'm going to give away when we're through talking. And that's why you have a number. You have a number at 1 because we always like to give you a free book, and 2 because that's the way you're going to line up to get your book signed and take a photograph with Elle. So the other person we need to bring up is the puppy. So come on, we need the puppy on camera here for a moment. It's just so cute, and it's been exceptionally good. Oh, look. So what's the puppy's name? Cooper.
Oh, this is
Cooper, look at you. Aren't you adorable? You're going to smell my cavapoo, aren't you? Yes, you are. You're so sweet. Oh, yes, you are. And so soft. Isn't he adorable? I know. So thank you. You're adorable. No, he's okay. He's okay. Look at him. He's just, I love puppies. They're just so adorable. So, Patrick, have you emerged from your lair? Do we have any online questions before we wrap up?
We did have one in the audience I didn't get to bounding ability. I know.
Yeah, my book club. During COVID, my book club we started up to kind of help me. My girlfriends were like, "We're gonna do this," and so anyways, yeah, my girlfriends started a book club to help me because my mom passed away and I wasn't doing well. The power of friendship and reading, right? Anyways, so we picked up Finlay Donovan as one of our books, and so we love it. Like, so much laughter. It's beautiful. I'm a huge Janet Ivanovich fan, and so I was like, guys, I think it kind of sounds like her. I think it's going to be a good time. So good, so good, so good. And I think that's one thing. You're like, even Stephanie Plum's series, that romance is also like kind of on the same par, right? Like, not totally open door, but so it all works with the genre. But our kind of question, because I finally caught up and read book 3, and they've been waiting for me to read it. And so we were talking about it at our last book club, and I was like, I get to go meet her. But we kind of were talking a lot about how, like, and you might not actually be able to answer this, but you can kind of go off of it. Her whole relationship with Nick is like it's like walking a very like fine line about being a lie and being truthful, because there are true feelings, but she's hiding so much. And like the reveal of what she's hiding, like, I know you can't go into that, but it's kind of like this, how as readers, it just makes us go, oh my gosh, where's this going? And then Stephen keeps trying to come in and you're like, go away. Just go away. Get the hint and leave. But we were kind of like that question about like, how do you create something that's so like it is authentic between them, but she's hiding so much and lies. Like, how is that a basis for a good relationship in the future? You know, that's kind of where our brain is worrying, is like, if this comes out or if it doesn't come out, and when it, you know, so I don't know what you can go off that, but we were discussing for a very long time.
Yeah. So like, I mean, really everything about the books is kind of in that same vein. She's towing a line, you know, she's doing all the wrong things for all the right reasons, you know, and we see what she wants and what she's trying to achieve, and she's balanced. She's making that's all a balancing act. Like, really, can she do it without putting herself in jail? You know, can she pull off this relationship that she really, really wants without sacrificing other things? Can she, you know? So it's the whole series has become sort of this balancing act for her, which is a challenge to write, but it's also super fun. I mean, my job, really, if everything came easy for my characters, you wouldn't read my books. They'd be really boring. They'd be living very boring lives. My job is to throw obstacles in her path. My job is to force her to grow. My job is to force her to make difficult choices. They're not always the right choices, but sometimes they're human choices, and they're learning choices, and those choices have consequences. And I can't directly answer your question, but I will say, when we get to the end of book 4, when you get to the end of Rolls the Dice, they have a conversation that addresses that point about honesty and the motivation behind, like, when is it okay to lie and when is it not okay to lie? And I think that will clear up some questions for you. It may raise others. Yeah, it may raise others. I don't know. But yeah.
More books, so.
Yeah, we got a few more books.
She said 7 books.
At least.
Okay, Patrick, what are the online questions?
Well, do you meet with private book clubs on Zoom and stuff like that?
Yes, and actually the first during
Me and my 2 girlfriends.
Yeah.
was awesome. It was awesome. You know, when the books first came out, we were in the middle of COVID, and like, we were all on Zoom. That's really all we could do. I couldn't couldn't come out and meet with readers. We weren't doing those kinds of things. So I was meeting with book clubs all the time, private book clubs, little book clubs, community book clubs, online book clubs, you name it. We were doing I was doing as many online events as I could to try to build exposure for the series. And I still do get asked. It's harder now as my schedules become more demanding. But there are times when I do meet with private book clubs. If I have the time and I'm able, I try. Yeah.
I didn't mean to volunteer you for her book club.
No.
That was very moving what you said, though. I think a lot of people can relate,
Yeah.
you know. Robin says, sex, dragons, and make shit up. What a great description of romantasy. Like, very succinct. Barbara's on fire tonight.
I've got to own it now that I've said it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's see here. Okay. Does your husband read your books? And if so, at what point?
That's a great question. My
I
husband.
have to answer it, you know.
No, really. No, I'll answer. There's very little that's off the table here. My husband read the first book in ARC form before it came out. And this is not his cup of tea. Like, this is not like he reads a lot of nonfiction. And every now and again he'll get into like a Brandon Sanderson or like these huge tomes, you know. This is not really his speed. So he read it and he enjoyed it, but I also made clear to him that I would not force him to read all the books in the series. And then a couple weeks ago, I gave him hell for not reading all the books in the series. So he listened to book 1 on audio. Do you guys enjoy the audiobooks?
Yeah.
Okay. Angela Daw, phenomenal. I'm meeting her for the first time next week. She's coming on tour with me to the Baltimore stop, and I get to fangirl all over her because she's fabulous. But he listened to the audiobooks, and now he's saying, well, I might listen to the rest of them, you know, like, but it's not, you know, my grown children don't read my books. I think my oldest son tried getting through like half of one, and he's like, yeah, Mom, that's pretty good. What's for dinner? But, you know, it's not a big deal for me because reading is a subjective thing. I don't want to force my book on, you know, everybody has their thing. Everyone has their jam, you know, and everybody's jam is different. And I would rather they spend that time reading books that light their fire, that make them excited to read. My husband's an exception. I'm going to make him read all the books. But, you know, otherwise it's like, it's not a hang up for me if someone says, yeah, it's not really my thing. That's cool. You do you. So.
There were a couple questions about your other books, the YA books. Everything has appeared under the same name, right? Elle Cosimano?
Yes.
Is that right? Was there ever any pressure from publishers to adopt a different pseudonym?
No. I don't know that we ever really had that conversation. I'm sure we probably all thought about it at times, but you know, when we came into the Finlay verse, I put it out as Elle Cosimano and nobody really questioned it. So, you know, because we're still looking at it as a debut. It was an adult debut, but it was a debut. And so it was kind of a fresh slate for me.
Right. Finally, is there any exciting TV news you could share with us?
Yes. Well, with a caveat. There are exciting TV conversations happening this week. I was actually in those conversations right before I got here. We are very excited that we've got some incredible producers and studios really excited about this. For those of you who've been on this journey with me for a long time, you know that we were under option previously. And as options tend to do, it did expire. We weren't able to get it off the ground for lots of reasons, timing being one of them. We had writer strikes. We had all kinds of things going on. But we have had great reception putting it back out there. We have several producers and studios who are very, very interested. We've got some fantastic, very big names that are very excited about the project. And hopefully we'll have some news to share very, very soon.
That it? Yay. Well, I'm sorry you didn't get to hear it here, but at least you now know that you will get to hear it fairly soon. So let's thank Elle for coming to see us tonight.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone at Poison Pen. This is such an
it's-
honor to be here. It's my very first time in the store. So
It is, yeah. Well, thank you. Great. So I said that we would be giving away a book as a thank you in part for your coming. And Hank will be here on Thursday for Wrong Word, which I think is her best book. Even I, and I say that with, like 70 years of reading behind me, even I didn't actually figure out what was happening in this book. So really, it hardly ever happens to me. So deeply impressed, and that's the reason it's our crime book of the month, because I think if I couldn't figure it out, you will have a hard time as well. John, how many do we have? 27. Thank you. So if you look in your books, you should have a number, and I'm going to ask Elle. I always put the blame on the author for this.
Oh, my goodness.
I know, it's cruel. If you would pick a number between 1 and 27, and that person will get the book.
all right, let's say 22. Oh, okay.
Not only that, Hank gave her a fabulous review and quote for her own book called Off the Air. So,
Yeah.
all right, pick another number that's not 22.
All right, 17.
Aha.
Yay!
All right. So this is your book. And then, is there anyone here, because I did bring my own advanced reading copy of Finlay Donovan Rolls the Dice. So if there is someone who wasn't able to buy a book for whatever reason it might be, is that you over there? All right, okay. Then would you hand that one? Oh, sorry, let me hop up. Let's pass it back to her. All right. Wonderful. Enjoy it. So what